Hi, welcome to Glimpse TV. I'm Kate Northrup, and I am so thrilled to be here today with my dear friend Meggan Watterson, who's the author of the forthcoming book, which launches this week, Reveal. And the subtitle is?
A Sacred Manual for Getting Spiritually Naked.
Yeah. I read this book, I got the printout even before Galley on paper, and I sat up into the wee hours of the night with Mike sleeping next to me, sobbing. Like, but in a good way, you know, like like my soul was sobbing in recognition of the wisdom and the truth that's in this book that we all know, but we've forgotten. It's really profound. I'll just tell you, go get the book right now. You're gonna want to even more after we talk to Meggan. Yeah. So, Meg.
Yes.
Here you are. You live in Manhattan.
Yes.
You're a mom. You have like an amazing, but also kind of like, you know, quote unquote normal life. I think a lot of people can relate to you. And yet, you're a deeply spiritual seeker, and everything in your life is infused with that. So how do you combine being like a regular fabulous woman with this profound spiritual knowing and quest that you seem to be on every moment of every day?
For me, I couldn't figure out how to do life without figuring out how I could infuse every moment with a sense of the numinous, a sense of what's divine, what's sacred. For me, my struggles were really around panic disorder, panic attack, which I know a lot of people suffer from, and a lot of people have experience with from different, range of anxiety disorders. Mine was fairly acute when I was in my late teens, early 20s, to the extent that by my early 20s, I had stopped being able to fly because I had run off too many airplanes at the last minute, and just finally couldn't handle the panic attacks that they brought on. And then what I found was, and I know you love this statement because it is so true, that when you move in the direction of fear, fear only increases. Yeah. So what happened for me is the more and more I made choices where the panic attacks were dictating what I could and couldn't do, the more and more fear I lived in.
And they got worse.
They got worse. I started getting afraid of, going to the grocery store, going to bed at night. I would get a panic attack at any moment, and so...
It's so debilitating.
It's very debilitating. I like to describe it that, at one point, before I went on a pilgrimage, I felt like I was in a cage so small my body couldn't even fit inside it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how trapped I felt.
And it is a physical experience. And what's so brilliant about your book and your approach to spirituality is it's a very physical, it's a body trip. Absolutely. It's not a head trip. So Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's new. You're one of the first people to do it, I think, or to talk about it.
So for me, so when I went on that pilgrimage, when I decided, okay, I can't live this way.
What's a pilgrimage, just for those who might not be familiar?
Very good point. So a pilgrim is someone who goes on a sacred journey to find a spiritual home. Like you can go on a pilgrimage to any saint or to a pilgrimage site. For me in particular, I was so drawn to the Black Madonna and to Mary Magdalene, and a lot of those sacred sites are throughout Europe. So I went on a pilgrimage to the Black Madonna. It was a group pilgrimage, and I was, the youngest by about 25 years or whatever.
And the stories about that in the book are so funny and poignant at the same time.
And, I had to take a boat because I couldn't fly. And so I was at this one particular pilgrimage site, and the Black Madonna of Vesuvius, she's called, and she's one of the most crude looking Black Madonnas. She's not fine or anything. She just, to me, she looked like the archetype of the crone. She was sort of like this this just incredible dark goddess figure, and the rest of the group was like milling about, looking at the church, whatever. I made a beeline for the Black Madonna, and then I just fell on my knees. And I was there for like the rest of the time. And
on your knees.
On my knees. And, you know, the rest of the group had a lot to say about what was going on with me and about what happened. You know, like, oh, mystical experience. Oh, you know, the spirit intervened, or Jesus was there. I mean, a whole bunch of stuff was going on, or whatever. For me, yes, I would definitely call it a spiritual experience or mystical or whatever, but for me, it was nothing like what I expected one to be.
Okay.
So for me, I was just finally fully in my body and unafraid. I was finally free from all of that terror and that anxiety, and I realized in that moment that all I needed to do was to allow myself to be fully present in my body, and then I could connect to this source of absolutely limitless, unfaltering, unconditional love inside of me. And so what I realized that day was that for me, for my spiritual path, it was in the opposite direction where I had been told to look for it, where so many of us had been told to look for it.
To look for spirit.
Yeah.
Which is, where have we been told to look for spirit?
Well, I mean, for the most part, it's usually been, especially in traditional religious settings, it's, you know, we want to go, we want to transcend the body. We want to go into the light, into the spirit. We want to, you know, deny the flesh.
Yeah.
All of that, and that to a certain extent has been ingrained in us for thousands and thousands of years. You know, and for
that
me,
the physical is wrong or dirty, or less than,
is an obstacle.
Is an obstacle.
It's an obstacle
to divinity.
So we have to transcend the body. We have to get past that obstacle to get to the divine. And for me, it was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It was that the body was in a way a vehicle, and that the way for me to reach the divine was to become fully embodied. Wow. So it was the opposite direction. It's going in, dropping fully in.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that the body is our chance to be here.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's our chance to be here. And if a mystical experience happens, it happens because of the body.
Right? And because of the body, not just, wow.
So including the worth of this body within the whole divine equation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And Meggan actually has a Master's of Divinity from the Harvard School of Theology or whatever it's called.
I sort of overdid it. I have a Master's of Theological Studies from Harvard, and then I went on and I got a Master's of Divinity at seminary, which was at Union Theological Seminary.
Okay, so she has basically, she's studied all the stuff there is and what you came to, which I love because you totally went there in terms of the texts and the manuscripts and the intellect. And then you still, even though you did that much academic rigor, found it in the body.
Absolutely.
Through your own personal experience through this pilgrimage and moving through your anxiety. So it's absolutely profound what you have done and how you articulate it. So for people who are listening, if a woman is listening and she perhaps has that inkling that there's something more. I was talking to a girlfriend the other day and she said she's got like a beautiful house and a lovely husband and a great business and, you know, like nothing's wrong from the outside. And she said, you know, the truth is I just kind of feel empty. Like I just feel a little empty. And I think that's common.
Yeah.
So what do you, I know that you actually do some, you do one-on-one working with people or not?
Yeah, I do, but mostly with my Red Ladies.
With your Red Lady.
Yeah.
So if a Red Lady came to you and said that, what would you tell her?
Well, I mean, I think part of the most important part of Red Ladies, of having a spiritual community, is being able to come together and to see that we all go through periods of feeling that way, and that often it takes just being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, really the heart of the book I think the message of it, you know, getting spiritually naked, is just about having the courage to be transparent,
Right.
to just be real. You know, I think sometimes women go on for a very long time feeling that emptiness, or feeling that because they think that they shouldn't, you know, or they think that they need to put on a facade and a veil of like, oh no, things are great, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like,
And they do this move.
and I think what's so great about having lady loves in your life is that they reflect back to you so quickly that you're lying. You're just lying. If they're good, yes, and they reflect it lovingly if they're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can give you a spiritual spanking and be like, what is going, you know, why are you putting up with just okay?
Right.
You know, there's so much more.
There's so much more.
There's so much more. And usually I think if someone's stuck, there's probably, you know, a bit of herself that hasn't been expressed yet.
Yeah.
You know,
Something that she's not saying.
There's something that's trapped, and I think, you know, that was part of the, you know, the greatest impetus for me to do all of this was because, you know, in the midst of those panic attacks, I always sensed and knew that there was this ocean worth of like love and creativity and expression, and it was just all stuck, you know? Or I had like a coffee stirrer, you know, to get it out. Like it was like, you know, like these little eeks would come out, but it was like, I felt oppressed by it, you know? I felt oppressed, and I knew that it was a sacred obligation to figure out, okay, how do I get that ocean outside of me?
Yeah.
And I think that can speak towards that woman as well. She's got a little ocean in her belly, and like that, you know,
And it wants to come
it
out.
wants to come out. It needs to come out.
So when you say that you figured out how to get it out, how to start expressing that, yes, Meggan was afraid of flying, and so she boarded the QE2 to go on a boat from New York to Europe for her pilgrimage. That's an amazing story that you have to read the book to find out. I won't give it away, but anyway. So if I were that woman feeling stuck in my life, feeling empty, even though from the outside, everything was going fine and I had all the stuff you're supposed to have, but I wasn't going to go get on the QE2 and go to Europe and visit the sites of the Black Madonna.
Right.
What would you suggest?
Well,
How do you tap in?
Well, you know, so I framed the book based on a female mystic who inspired me a lot. Her name was Marguerite Porete, and she was asked by church fathers to write her spiritual memoir, which she did. It was called The Mirror of Simple Souls. Mm-hmm. And it's a 7-layered process, because 7 is just, you know, it just is the number in terms of like mystical transformation, alchemical transformation. And she wrote to all of the nuns in her abbey to describe the way that divine love had transformed her, had taken her through these 7 steps and transformed her. So I set up Reveal in that same way, where basically I'm writing directly, intimately to my Red Ladies, to Revealers, to all these women I've been meeting over the past decade, and just spoke really eye to eye, you know, directly to them, and took them through the 7 sort of shifts, I would call them, in my beliefs that happened. And of course, you know, they can happen anywhere and through any circumstances, but essentially these were the 7 major shifts in beliefs, or I also refer to them as veils. So it's like a veil that lifted for me to be able to get closer to the divine.
Or layers of the onion, or whatever you were going to call it.
Right.
And we apologize, there are some sirens going on. Things are getting really exciting here. So I love that. It's layers. And it's not, you know, what I love about that is so often in our modern world, there's like, well, it's the 7-step process to getting, you know, it's like, no, because one layer could come before the other, or whatever, and it's a process, and you're going to be doing those layers forever.
It's not
a dance of the 7 veils.
Exactly.
It's not a, you know,
no,
like boot camp of the 7 veils.
No, they're very much like, you know, those Russian dolls where they're one inside the other. They're not, or they're concentric to each other. They're not linear.
Right.
This is something that's, you know, and and they happen for different people at different times. And for some people, you know, you're going to be lifting that last veil, you know, for like. So I mean, it just depends, and I, you know, this is just how I told my story, and because for me, I think that it really allowed me to describe the way that the approach to the divine was simultaneously the same as simply nearing myself, my true self. You know, getting past these thoughts, beliefs, ideas that were really keeping me from just being one, you know, with what is most divine. And so it's really that process of getting to know ourselves is simultaneous to finding the divine.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really, like, that was really well articulated. So you talk a lot about freedom, actually.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about freedom.
Yeah.
And one might think we talk about different types of freedom, because you really talk about spiritual freedom and I talk about financial freedom.
Yeah.
So how do you see those two things as being interconnected?
Well, I thought I was going to talk about the divine worth chapter, because I know you and I have talked about that before, and how, you know, if a woman isn't really holding just how worthy she is, you know, and how worthy her work is in the world, then that will often reflect in her not asking for what she truly needs.
Financially or otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. From in the bed to in the office, she's not going to ask for what she truly, because she doesn't really get yet that she matters, right? And her flesh matters. So originally I thought I was going to talk about that, but I just kind of got a hit to talk about, you know, that there's this sort of with the divine and money and sexuality and power, we're coming into this new place, this new time, where all of that can be aligned in a way so tremendously that who we are can be supported by the universe. So we are what we do, and we're supported to be able to be that. So what I mean is that for me, hands down, when I say freedom, what I mean is that at any given moment, like right now, on the subway, you know, in the midst of a panic attack, no matter where I am or what I'm doing, you know, because I fly now, but I still panic. But the difference is, instead of bolting and like assaulting stewardesses to get off, I can stay seated and I can connect to the voice inside of me that I call my soul voice, that I know is the truth.
Right. Like, so freedom is the choice to connect.
To connect to that truth and to hear that voice. Now, by connecting to that voice and following it so faithfully, even if that means betraying other people I love, even if that means doing things that terrify, betraying my fear. Because believe me, you know, I'm like this still on planes, like with my face out the window, you know, like I'm petrified, but I do it even still because my soul is telling me, keep your little butt on the plane, girl, you know, and so I do it. But I also follow that voice in terms of business, in terms of...
Yes, you do. We were just talking about it before we started. So Meggan has this conference called Reveal, and it's coming up in the spring. It's May 18th. I'm going to be speaking. Meggan will be speaking. We've got some other amazing ladies coming. It's in New York, and there's a link below the video. And so that's a great, super practical. When you make decisions about Reveal and who's going to speak and how you're going to do it and who's going to be producing it and, you know, everything, what do you do? How do you make those decisions using your soul voice?
I do the same thing that I do for everything else. I just meditate, go within, and I hear the answers.
And at first when you started hearing the answers through writing.
Yes,
which was really cool. I know in the book she talks about that the pen the red pen, and we actually wore red on purpose, sort of, not because we both showed up and we were wearing red. It's also, tomorrow is the 1 Billion Rising Eve Ensler movement here in New York and around the planet. If you haven't found out about that, this video is coming out afterwards, so you can go Google it and you'll find out all the amazing things that happen with people dancing around the world to end the violence against women. But anyway, so it was a red pen, and your soul voice spoke through that, and now you don't need the pen.
Right. Right, it was almost like, sort of training wheels.
Yeah.
To get me to decipher between the voice of fear, other people's voices, what was really the voice of my truth, and that happened through the journal writing. And then eventually, on the pilgrimage, I heard that voice from within me, and I knew without question that it was that same voice I'd been meeting in the red ink.
So if you have if you're listening and you have a voice that you think, like we have a lot of voices, right? There's our mother is totally in there. And then there's the voice of fear, and then there's, whoever's in there. But do you find that when it is that true soul voice, like it's unequivocal?
Oh yeah, you just know. And if you're questioning, then it's not.
Then it's not. Okay, great.
It's like, it's seriously that simple. If you're like, oh, was that mine?
No,
then it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Go in again, try again. Just keep asking.
And it takes practice, right? It's not like...
Absolutely.
So if you haven't gotten to a place you're like, I can't meditate, I'm too squirmy or whatever, which totally right here.
Yeah.
But I still, what's cool, just for me, I hear her... like whenever,
right.
And I'm sure you do too. I sometimes I meditate, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I hear her in the shower. Or in the middle of the night or whatever. So it's not like you have to have a thing in order to do it. You'll just know.
And that's something, I'm glad you brought that up, because it just breathes such fresh air into the idea of what does it look like to meditate and how do we go within.
Right.
Because a big part of Reveal is really illuminating the fact that women don't necessarily pray and meditate in the way that, traditional religions necessarily do. And that, at least from my experience and all the women that I know, it's like, sometimes I hear the most truth when I'm on the elliptical machine, or I'm like,
or when
grocery
you're
shopping, or dancing,
or whatever.
And that's no less holy than sitting on a cushion with a candle and mala beads and incense,
right.
Really, I think that's it's a part of really seeing what works for us, breaking out of expectations of what it is to be spiritual, and then finding what does it really mean to be spiritual for yourself in your own life.
Right.
What really works.
Absolutely.
And most women need the movement. They want the movement. They don't want to be sitting still.
Yeah. Well, and because it's a physical experience, and that for me, I can have a physical experience of the divine while not moving, but it works better for me if I move.
Yeah.
So, you already sort of touched on this, but what are you doing in your life right now that you're afraid of, that you're doing anyway?
Oh goodness. I think
you're flying, so that's good.
I'm flying, yes, that's definitely. Yeah. Okay. I just heard that I'm surrendering, and that sounds really simple, but it's been really, what I mean when I say I'm surrendering is that I'm not able to plan anymore anything. Not just what I'm going to say or where I'm going to go, or I'm at this point where, whenever I go in around meditation, it's just, I am fully surrendered to the divine. That's my mantra. I am fully surrendered to the divine. And it terrifies me. Like, absolutely terrifies me. For Reveal, when it first started, I used to come up with this, I had everything written out, and then I had also memorized it, but then I, had it. And then for the first time I spoke in San Jose at Ignite, I wasn't holding it, but I had completely memorized it, and it's like little by little.
It's like the layer, the veils.
Exactly. And just getting to the point where I show up and I trust, and then I just listen to the voice of my soul, and I just follow that, even when it makes me sweat to think of what's going to come out my mouth, and
it's always right, though. It can't not be, right? If it's
Right, and there's this beautiful realization in the practice of it, of like, I don't think I can display loving myself anymore. I don't think I can display loving myself any more fiercely than by just showing up and knowing and trusting that I'm enough, like whatever I say, because it's the truth.
And that's
It's just
the
my
divine
truth.
worth. That is absolutely, and that is so interconnected with our finances, with love in our lives, with our ability to just sit in the night and be okay with ourselves. And anyway, thanks for coming on my show.
Absolutely.
Love you.
I love
I'm
you
so
too.
excited for your book.
I love you too.
Thank you. You can find Meggan at megganwatterson.com. There's a link to her book below. And get your tissues ready. Okay. Shit. Okay. Go.
Okay, you can go again, but that kind of... Go ahead. I was just
He's
asking
really just checking
if you're ready to go.
Okay.
Go ahead.